All right, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Hartford Selectboard on Tuesday, November 15th, 2022 at 6:01 p.m. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would anyone like to lead us? Mariam, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it serves, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mary.
Very much.
You could have said no.
So we will close this portion of the select board meeting and reopen as the local liquor control board. We have one application that's for Dewey Mills Cafe. An application for a license of the first and third class. And I believe we do have a representative from Dewey Mills here.
Hello, I'm
Hello.
Aaron Griel, the owner operator of Dewey Mills Café, Quechee.
Great.
Michael, what?
Aaron Griel,
Oh, Eric, Guriel. No,
my dad's name.
Michael. Yeah, Michael. Yeah. Okay. I know you. Sorry. I knew you folks. I knew you folks. So
That's great. Yeah, if you want to just tell us a little bit about the cafe, and I think that would be fine. Just give us a little background. It's fairly new, isn't it?
Yes, it's in a location where when I grew up, it was Dana's by the Gorge.
Yep.
For many years, and then it changed hands over time. And I've just been working in the hospitality industry for the last 25 years. I grew up here in Hartford, and my parents had a restaurant, Sevi's in Quechee, for a long time. And I wanted to come back and open up a restaurant, and we've started that on February 10th. We opened our doors. And I would like to expand our offerings, as I'm also a commercial caterer as well, to offer more inclusive meals and packages, and I wanted to include alcohol into that. So I went through all the processes.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I would be happy to take a motion.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay,
I move to approve a first and third class liquor license to Dewey's Mills Cafe LLC 5945 Woodstock Road, Quechee, Vermont 05059.
do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, and we have two abstentions, Kim and Dan.
Only because we have liquor licenses, so there's nothing personal.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
see how painful that was?
You too.
Okay, I will close that portion of the local liquor control board. We will reopen as the Hartford Select Board. Order of agenda, I don't think there are any changes to it. So we will go to public comment. As usual, we will start with people in the room, and then we'll move to people who are on Zoom. You'll have 5 minutes to speak. Please identify yourself and tell us your name and village of residence. No personal attacks, and please refer to the select board as a whole. Anyone? I don't see anyone in the room. Is there anyone on Zoom?
One hand, two hands up now.
Okay.
I'm going to go first to John Granger. Go ahead.
You guys hear me okay?
Hey, John.
Oop, hey, can you hear me?
It says talking, but we can't hear them.
John, I don't know if are you muted? It says you're talking, but we can't hear you right now.
How about that? Is that any better? Can you hear me now? Oh, shoot. Nothing?
Tim, does it show them unmuted or no?
You
It
hear me?
shows him unmuted.
I'm saying unmuted too.
We have volume like on the TV.
Oh,
Oh, maybe that's it.
can you guys hear me now?
Hold on, John. We're having some audio difficulty.
Is that any better? How about now? Anything? Can you guys hear me now?
Are you on Zoom, Paula?
Can you hear me now?
John, do you want to try again?
Yeah, can you hear me now? I will call in.
I'm told that they can hear him at home, so it's got to
That's
be
our
the
TV.
sound here.
All right, John, we're gonna keep working on it so we can can hear you.
On your audio, on your computer, if you. On the voice, I had solved this for the.
Unless-
the other day.
I don't want to get the echo. Echo.
That doesn't sound very good.
Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me now? Hello?
Is the volume on this side?
But it was only because he
I'm
said.
sure it is on the other.
So previously I was connected to that system, but I'm just. on
Oh,
my own.
okay, so that's the problem.
Yeah.
It doesn't recognize it. Okay, so if you were to hook up to that system, it would recognize it once you get the speakers to there. That worked for some current committee last time.
Right, but I can't hook up to it, I don't think, because the TV's so.
I don't know what you guys are doing. We, well, when we were at a charter committee meeting here, we didn't have Zoom. We just hooked that computer up to that speaker and Bob's your uncle. Worked fine. So I don't know what's going on with Zoom. Can we, can I check it with Chico and we can come back to this? Let's come back to it because we can't hear it.
Yeah, do we think is
Have to troubleshoot.
this, so if we went to someone else on Zoom, we would have the same issue?
Yeah.
Yeah, if they can hear it in the public, can't hear it here.
Us, we can come back to public.
Yeah, we can come back to public comment. Sorry, everyone.
And the closed
please
captioning
hold
doesn't have
tight.
anything to do with it, right? Okay, all right, gotcha.
Okay, so we're gonna come back to public comment once we get the Zoom working. So we'll just proceed with our agenda. Once we get word that it's working, we'll go right back to public. So select board comments and announcements. I'll start with Ken and work our way down.
Okay, so yeah, if you got that, so you just did this, we're gonna postpone public comment for a second. Yes, this morning I attended the second BLCT Epic Journey cohort, which was today a combination with the Ideal program that Mary was in attendance as well. I think it's really excellent and valuable. I'm really glad that we've had the opportunity to do it. And this program is part of why everyone has recently gotten these surveys, the welcoming and belonging surveys that were sent out. And because of the transition, it was a little clunky as to who it came to. So first of all, I'd like to express my gratitude for everyone who has filled out this survey thus far. And if there's anyone, members of town staff, committees, boards, commissions, if you've gotten that survey and haven't filled it out yet, it would be much, much appreciated. And then it would be really interesting to see there will be a bunch of analysis of the data that comes back in all these kind of intersections of the just sort of sense of culture within the town of Hartford as an organization. So I'm really excited about it and wanted to share that.
Thank you, Kim. Dan? Mary?
Kim said it all.
Okay, great. Ally, anything? Rock?
I love this town. It's a great honor to serve here. Thank you for having me.
Lanny?
Yeah, last time we had a meeting, I did not articulate very well my stance on funding for training, and I like to be able to articulate that a little better. I believe that we as select board members in this town should be attending trainings, and we have to have something in our budget for that training. But the training that we receive, I think, should be targeted towards specific goals, and it should be measurable outcomes that we have from the training. This training that we're having right now and all the surveys that we had in place, it would be interesting to know with this survey that's been sent out, what a baseline is, and then take that in a year down the road to see if we have any measurable impact that we have, because any money that we spend should have an impact that's measurable. And in the past, I've seen us spend money on broad spectrum training without having any way to measure the effectiveness of that. And that's what I would hope that our goals would be for the future. And that's where I believe that Mary's idea of perhaps cutting some of our funding and spending it on focus training might be better for this board. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lanny. I don't have much. Shout out to our town treasurer who decided to come. Bill's loss was nothing less than catastrophic.
Mr. Chairman, that's not really appropriate. It's very
Well.
Thank you, Lanny.
the man has suffered enough.
All right. I think we're still working on
You asked him if he could speak.
yeah, John, if you're on, could you speak?
I'm on. Can you hear me?
Ask him one more time.
One more time?
One more time, John?
Can you hear me? Houston, can you hear me?
I don't know why it's coming out of here.
Hello?
Well, it's not connected to.
Ask him one more time.
Can you hear me now?
Try again. Sorry to keep making me do that.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Can you hear me now? Hello? Anybody?
Seems like maybe we should keep moving and come back to public comment because we're not quite there. Okay, so our next item is appointments. We're going to consider the reappointment of Joanne Ells as zoning administrator. I don't know if Joanne is joining us. But
No, she.
Zoom. Or if she's joining us. No, okay.
So this is a fairly routine activity that we have every 3 years. It's a requirement of the state statute that the position of the zoning administrative officer be appointed every 3 years. I just want to note that the duties, responsibilities, and powers of that were integrated into the zoning administrator staff position several years ago. And this has become just a matter of maintaining compliance with state statute. So based on that, the Planning Commission actually did review this as required by state statute and unanimously approved the nomination of Joanne Ells as the zoning administrator. And her current appointment ends on November 22nd, and this would continue it for another 3 years.
Are there any questions for Lori about this? Lynn?
This seems to me it's pretty boilerplate stuff. I didn't know if this was something that would sort of like put out there for anybody else. Or is because we have a zoning administrator, we put Joanne in for that. I mean, I'm not.
quite frankly, just for staff itself. Because
Sure.
we're not all working in the same building and there's a disconnect there. That got put on hold. I will say with namely, one of the things that we are asking is,
There's 12 kids who get picked up between Frost Park and Horseshoe Ave in the morning. We've witnessed speeding, passing on a double yellow, not stopping for the school bus, all through that area. I've had HPD do a speed enforcement through that stretch, which I think the top speed was 61 miles an hour. It's a real issue. I invite any of you guys to go down there and just stay in the corner of Horseshoe Ave and watch the cars speed by. I mean, within 10 minutes, you'll see the flashing lights say slow down, which means we're doing 40.
Yeah.
I've seen tow trucks do 40, advanced transit. You get 18-wheelers that come through there doing 35 miles an hour around that corner, and the road's not wide enough for them to actually make some of those corners without going into the shoulder, which is very small. So it's just not safe.
John, what's the current speed there? Is it 30?
It's 30.
30, and you'd want to see it go down to like 25 or something.
I mean, one of the biggest issues is advanced transit. And I've called it to them, and I think it was successful for probably 48 hours. And then the industrial park on Alcott Drive, and then across from Dover School. When I asked V-Trans about lowering the weight limit, I got kind of a bland, well, I think those are set across the whole state.
Okay.
But he didn't know. And I said, tell me more, and he didn't respond.
Okay.
So, I mean, I grew up in Keene, and I know there's parts of Route 10, it's New Hampshire, that the governing weight limit is set low enough so that 18-wheelers can't go down Washington Street. So it's a neighboring state with similar issues, bigger town, but I know all of the residents that I have spoken to who live right on that stretch agree that it's a major issue. And my neighbor got hit and he was 13 on the same road. He's 50 something. So
And V-Trans said it basically we would write a letter to them, the select board would, and basically ask that they consider reducing the speed limit at least.
Yeah, so on their website, they have a section, how is speed set? And basically they do an engineering study, and 85% of the average speed is what they set as the speed limit. Now, thankfully, V-Trans has paved it, so it's nice and smooth, but it also definitely means people are driving faster on it. So I know I looked at, I think Middlebury did Route 7 10 years ago, something like that.
Okay.
And the engineering study that V-Trans did actually set the speed limit higher, and they had to do some sort of legal battle with them, and they got it lowered to 35 or 30, whatever it was. That's the only thing I could find on the internet of another town doing something similar.
Any questions for John? Okay.
And I just want to apologize because that book was there. I mean, it's definitely on us now, and I think our transition has backlogged a little bit. But I wonder if we could reach out to our state Senate elect Becca White, who was not served on the transportation committee. Like, she might be able to help us find not only like the, you know, a template to use for the letter to request from the state, but also the like who a better contact would be to approach about the weight limit option.
Yeah.
So I think between staff and board members, we could try to see if we can get something together. I mean, I don't have any objection to making that, you know, to having that come before us as requested. Fully support it.
Any thoughts?
That's state highway. The problem that I see is that it is a state highway, and if there should be something on the interstates that requires them to shut down the southbound side of the interstate and the northbound side of the interstate, we have to have a way to get traffic between Hartford and Norwich.
I think they exempt those.
I would prefer to see.
How often have you seen that happen?
It may not. I mean, I've seen it in other towns
Right.
quite a bit, but I'm
You're talking a catastrophic accident or something happens to the road. I mean, it doesn't
My-
happen
my-
very often.
my point is that it would be nice to know if we can get some more mitigation up there for speed instead of just lowering the weight limits to preclude traffic, because it is a state highway and it's a major thoroughfare. I realize your pain. I understand that, and I have sympathy for that, but it is a state highway. We have to have it open for that.
It's also a heavily populated residential area, regardless of whether or not it's a state highway.
Right.
You are an elected official representing the town of Hartford,
I
not
understand.
the state, right?
I understand that.
I didn't know if John was aware of Matt, because I'm gonna put you on the spot because I see you in the room, the new Safe Schools Initiative and the lights going on up there. John, are you aware of that? Matt, would you mind just a couple of sentences?
We just submitted a grant application to the state of Vermont for this state Safe School program. And we are requesting 2 rapid flashing beacons, and one at the intersection of Gillette Street and Hartford Ave, and the other at the intersection of the multi-use path on Christian Street.
Yep.
And we'll also be considering other locations as well in the not too distant future.
Awesome.
And I think that we could, you know, figure out what we would want to do for a letter, and then we could debate it. People may have objections to it, but I don't see an issue with us, you know, considering it and sort of putting that work in place so that if we decided we'd like to make that request, that we could. Rocket and then Mary.
So just running through the list of possible remedies to this, because I think that this is a problem worth remedying. Writing to V-Trans, lowering weight limits, reducing speed, but are there things that we can do immediately as a town in terms of just putting traffic cones up on the shoulder, or one of those flashing speed limit, what do they call them? The police departments have?
We have one of those right
Further
three
on.
houses down from my house on
Okay.
the corner.
I assume we can't put speed bumps, right? Because it's a state highway. Because speed bumps are pretty effective. I'm just trying to think if there are any other, especially more immediate resolutions that we can provide in terms of just creating some sort of temporary solution to that. Because I could see where I'm completely supportive of writing a letter, but I could also see where that could take months, you know, the government being what it is. So I'm wondering if there are any other possible solutions, if anyone in the room has any other ideas.
We're also in public comment right now.
Sure, yeah, I guess maybe this is just my statement and inviting the public to write me an email, because I would definitely be supportive of finding, even if it's just like literally putting cones up or something, you know, whatever it is, to make it look like a traffic zone, so people drive a little slow.
And Mary?
I just want to give a shout out of support because that's the way I drive all the time. Because I live almost close to the town line there, and it is, you know, it is very, very residential, and there are lots of people that use the sidewalks and the buses come and everything. And I appreciate your saying this because I think it needs to come down the speed limit. There's a lot of traffic on that road, a lot of traffic.
Lanny, I just want us to be mindful that we are.
I would support lowering the speed limit. I would not support lowering the weight limits. Because I think that road has to be open for heavy traffic that's supporting goods and commerce, but I would support lowering the speed limit.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sean. Really appreciate it.
Time frame to see a letter,
Uh,
the hard question.
4 days. I'll draft it.
I think, you know, it would take a few meetings to get on the agenda, I think. But we'll see, you know, we'll see what happens.
I'm not throwing away.
I
That's
know.
helpful.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, John.
So to clarify, is it the directive of the board to get some research and information on that?
Yeah, I think Kim said he had reaching out to our new senator-elect, maybe good. She does have experience on the transportation committee in Montpelier. Okay, I know we don't really have public comment because Zoom's down. I don't know, Kim, if anyone wrote into the comment so we can.
I think mostly just to tell us if the audio wasn't working, but I think now that they can hear us.
I'll just confirm that.
Okay, yes, they can hear us, but we cannot hear them. So.
Okay. I think that's where we're at, and unfortunately, you know, I think that's gonna mean we won't hear from a couple of people, but I don't know that we have another option given the technological difficulty we're having. All right, so we will move on from public comment to board reports, motions, and ordinances. The first is the Green Mountain Power notification. I believe we have someone from Green Mountain Power here to tell us about that.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin Mack. I work for Green Mountain Power, White River Junction, 281 Old Bus Drive. The proposal to the select board is a system upgrade rebuild along the very south end of the VA cutoff road and onto the North Heartland Road, Route 5 South. Our plan is to directional bore under the 89 bridge along Route 5. Come back up on the other side in that little island by the Wrights Reservoir, back to poles. Initially, my plan was to go underground up Wrights Reservoir Road, but where we would propose that, there's a water line that goes up through there, and it's all ledge. It is really not very conducive to that option. So what we've gone around with the state is to set, I think it's 5 new poles up Wrights Reservoir Road to feed those customers up there with their single phase power. Currently, what's really driving this, a few things. From my end, it's reliability and the power to everyone who lives south of the VA cutoff road on Route 5. But one of the other things is broadband build out. One of these fiber companies wants to attach to that line that right now it crosses by the carriage shed, crosses 89, comes up to VA to Wrights Reservoir, crosses Wrights Reservoir Road, and then is off-road on the ledges, comes down to the aquatic center. Currently, it's less than 16 feet high crossing the interstate. Well, they want to put another attachee there that's going to put us below that. And in order to change those poles and move all the wires, it's kind of a mess across the interstate. And you still have kind of a garbage line reliability wise. So this line will improve reliability. It'll improve the power down through there. There's another solar going in down HCOREI Road. So we need to put some equipment there too on that line. All in all, it would just be much better. Everything would be within the state right away along Route 5 and up Wrights Reservoir Road. So,
You mentioned the fiber company and.
Yeah.
So is there any collaboration with them for what it would be buried when you're doing the burying?
yeah, I've talked to all of them. So my proposal would be, and I'm dealing with Morse directional drilling. We got too late this year. Once it starts to freeze at night, it's done, no more drilling. So this would be a project that would happen first thing in the spring. And my proposal is 3 conduits for power. 20 feet off the piers. So the piers are 20 feet off the center line of the road. Right there on the 89 bridge, and then 20 feet from the piers towards the abutment. I would have him bore in 2 6-inch and a 3-inch conduits for power. Then step down 5 feet and pull in 6 conduits for all existing communications and future communications. So yeah, I mean, my thought is, while we're doing it, I want to do it all. I don't want to ever have to go back. I don't want anyone to ever dig where our power is, anything like that. So yeah, it's all in the state approval. They've approved it. All the communication companies are on board.
Okay.
Consolidated, Comcast, VTEL, EC Fiber, Sovereignnet, First Light.
Great.
Mary?
I did notice in the maps that you talked about taking out some trees.
Absolutely.
That's such a big issue here. Could you explain how
Yeah,
many you?
What we would have to remove for trees, we wouldn't have to remove any from the VA cutoff road to Wright's Reservoir. Through there, you know, it would be poles in place right where they are, be a couple more poles and replace the ones that are there. Then it would be directional board to the other side of the interstate. There's no trees right there. And then from there, it would be a new overhead line to right across from the aquatic center. If you go down there and look on the south side of Wright's Reservoir, the 3-phase power line comes off the ledges. And what I would do is set a really tall pole there and intercept those lines. So there's a couple oak trees that kind of lean out towards the road anyways. Those would have to go away. And essentially, I call it brush, but the stuff going up Wright's Reservoir Road, it's probably a total of 4 trees and maybe some small shrubbery stuff between the fence and Wright's Reservoir Road to where the existing power is.
And could I just ask, that road up Reservoir?
Yep.
Wright's Reservoir Road was just recently this summer, I believe, paved. It wouldn't affect any of that?
No, that's the other reason why we would look at poles. You know, like I said, I think it's 5 poles. I'd have to look at the map, but I think it's 5 poles up Wright's Reservoir. It would just keep us to the north side of that road. And I mean, I don't know if it matters, but I would use, that's an area where you don't have to be certified to work around power to do the trimming. I use this company out of Thornton, New Hampshire, Clausen's Tree Service. They do a fantastic job, but they're not line clearance certified. So anything like that, where it's a new rebuild, I use them.
Any?
Would there be any change in the primary voltage running up Lake River Road?
No, I say no. Actually, instead of the voltage on Wright's Reservoir Road being 3-phase, 12,470, it would be single phase, 7,200. So be the same voltage, but it would just be single phase instead of 3-phase.
So do you have any customers up there that currently use any 3-phase power?
No. No.
So is there any cost to customers that were receiving 3-phase that there's going to be change in their cost going with single-phase power, reduction?
There aren't any
Perhaps.
3-phase customers up there.
But you have it running up there. Okay, so you.
We have it up there right now. Yep.
Okay, will
But
that
there aren't
affect
any
the,
3-phase
so it
customers.
won't affect the cost to customers?
Not any customers that are there right now.
Okay, all right.
I mean, I guess if there was potential that someone wanted 3-phase power up there, even if that were the case, this would be a much better way to get it up there.
Okay,
Reliable and less with the interstate crossing and all that.
and the primary voltage running south on Route 5, will that change?
No.
Okay, do you have to have any difference in primary voltage that you have a solar field in question being put in?
No, but what it does is there's a lot of power coming back on the grid there.
I'm concerned about
Because
safety
Quechee
as well.
Hydro and Melissa Road Solar and this new one on Quarry Road. So what we have to do is we put in these voltage regulators
Yeah.
so that it maintains the voltage at your house at a constant. What's a little unique is because there's so much generation coming back, instead of think of the power coming from the White River sub this way. Well, there's so much coming back on the line. Those new regulators that we need to put up in front of the credit union will be bi-directional.
Secondary's always 220 anyway, so it's usually 220. So
Most of the solars are 480,
480 for
or
the-
even 600.
okay, all
Yeah,
right. News to me. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Any other questions?
I was concerned about the safety aspect.
Yeah,
If there's gonna be a
no-
change in safety.
Nothing there will change, and being underground, the underground portion through there. From the way I see it and the state and the boring, we expect our underground to be 10 to 12 feet deep, so.
Okay.
Because it's gonna be right on this slope.
Thank you very much. I'll take a motion. Manny?
Chairman, make a motion to move to grant permission to Green Mountain Power Corporation to locate poles, guys, wires, and underground lines as requested within the highway limits of the North Heartland Road, Route 5, VA Cutoff Road, and Wrights Reservoir Road for project 180759.
I'll second.
Ally will second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay,
John.
our next item is the HCOREI quarterly update.
I'm on the spot. Great time. Sarah Campbell, HCOREI current chair, and I live in White River Junction. I sent in a memo and I want to change the order of things a little bit, and I hope that's okay with everyone. So you have our updated memo, and I'm going to start. I'm going to get a couple of things off the list first. HCOREI has started the process of evaluating our charge. Our charge renewal is due on 4/7/23, and we have gone through several of our main items, and we'll continue that work in all of our meetings that remain this year. We did put in a Juneteenth funding request. I just want to make sure that do we need to do anything? We've never put in a funding request before. So like, do we find out? And how that works? And then that event is in June. So we're assuming that we can't support the June event. Am I reading that correctly? Would that be
23?
Yeah.
right? So we need to figure out funding for this year's Juneteenth outside of town funding. Okay, thank you. So we are halfway through our process with Tuck Community Consulting, and they gave us our update last night. And I actually printed out the packets. I know I couldn't get them in the packet, but can I give them to you guys? Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Do you mind passing down? No, thank you. So I won't read you the whole thing, but I do want to give highlights. We've been working with them since late September. Our request from them was to help evaluate communications needs for the town and help us focus our resources and our dollars in the most impactful way to achieve the strategic plan goal of a town communication strategy and a public information officer. Work so far has been evaluation of town communication outlets, both official and crowdsourced, and the launch of a communication survey. Key takeaways, and you can look into the report. Residents primarily get their information from third-party sources. The Valley News and the listservs were the top two sources of intake, but their requests are the website and some sort of email system from the town. For example, and this is me, not a community member, Lead Alert is a system that emails out frequently. Dartmouth College has one called Dart Alert. You see a theme. But that was kind of repeated over and over again, is like more proactive communication, and then the town website. Follow-up interviews are in progress with people who said that they would be willing to talk to the students. And then they are working to outreach to some other town managers in both New Hampshire and Vermont about their communications processes. So their work is ongoing. They do want to, you'll see in the next steps, they do want to try to reach some of our more underserved communities. They compared the census data with the data that we got, the demographics we got from the survey. And so they want to talk to us, and we're going to discuss that in a HCOREI meeting tomorrow. So this is a good segue into the next two topics, which is why I changed the order. Oh,
Can I ask a question about
Sure.
that, Sarah? How many folks actually, because this is from the communication survey?
yeah.
How many folks ended up responding to that? I'm just
As of
curious.
last night, it was 98. Joe, do you remember? I think it was nearly 100 as of last night. We stood at the polls and gave out surveys from 7 to 8:30 and then from 3 to 6. We've pushed it on some social media. We can leave the poll open as long as we'd like until their term ends. So if we want to do another push and continue to collect data, that's up to us, and we just have to direct them to do that. But it's not closed, so people can still take it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So what these the next two things on our list were website status and policy. So website status, we were coming to kind of just find out where we sat with the website, what we thought the completion rate of it was. And we had been holding back on pushing on policy decisions based on the finishing of the website. But a lot of the questions now with this communications plan is what are the long-term plans for the website, not just the technical plans of finishing the work that needs to be done, but who's maintaining it and how we are keeping it relevant. I got a lot of emails the morning after the election, like, where are the ballot results? They aren't on the front page. When I open the website, all I see is trees. There's nothing prominent on the above the bold half of the website, which was both a comment in the comments and observation from our communications team. There are also a lot of anecdotal conversations about not being able to find object X on the website. When I was doing HCOREI research, the agendas and minutes have stopped at 2021. So you can't do any historical review to find out ongoing things that we're tracking. So there's no minutes that are older than 2021, which I've found just for our committee has been problematic. And then that brings us to policy, which does have a direct tie-in to the website. So this board approved in October of 2021, a motion to formalize policy work in the town, starting with a policy on policies, digitizing and standardizing all policies, making them accessible and searchable, and eventually reviewing them with a lens of equity. At this time, no progress has been made in this area. HCOREI has presented a couple of templates to the town, both the select board and the previous town manager, and some recommendations on policies, with the one from the VLCT being what we would recommend a starting place for our town, since it's very much set up for a municipality. So we'd like to know how we can move forward on at least getting a policy on policies in front of this board. Because we know we can revise it as many times as we'd like. And then what the process would be to approve a template so that we can start moving policies, ordinances, and relevant documents to a single standardized template, which will vastly improve the ability to search them and figure out when things were updated. So that's also going to have a funding impact. From my understanding, there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be digitized. Is this information that can be taken to a public place like Noman or Staples and have, like, can it be digitized by someone? I don't think that town staff needs to stand at the scanner all day. You know what I mean? But it would have to be, we would have to take those books and have someone do that work, or hiring out freelance someone to stand in the town hall and scan policies. But I don't think it's a free activity, and I don't think that we should be asking town staff who are already maxed out to scan things. HCOREI, there are members in HCOREI and I think other volunteers who are willing to help templatize things. on a volunteer basis, as in if they are digital, moving them to templates, they would obviously still be processed by their department owners and the approved through whatever town approval process goes through. There would be no like posting things that a volunteer participated in, but there are people who are willing to help do this work. So I'm throwing that out there. Because until we get everything digitized and we get it templatized, we can't even start with keyword accessibility, searchability, readability by internet readers, and then even moving to a lens of equity and diversity. So as I mentioned last year, at minimum, this would be an 18 to 24 month project, and will most likely require resources well beyond town staff. So, and then the last request we have is where we stand on the community safety review, where the RFP stands, and if ARPA funds would be available for that once we move forward with the selection process. I think that's it. I know it's a lot.
Questions for Sarah? Kim?
Going back, just starting with the RFP, because I had some involvement in that. We did receive one proposal in response to the RFP, which came in at $600,000, but which was discouraging, but it was also not the scope of work we were actually asking for. It was a company out of Texas who has clients, including Department of Defense. And I mean, it was more of a security assessment than a safety assessment. And so went through the proper channels for that. And the RFP will be re-released. And I have followed up with a few organizations that I still think would be good candidates if they have the bandwidth to manage it. And I think there will be some submissions again that are more in line with what we were originally hoping for. But I think, you know, like many things, like with the communication insufficiencies or inadequacies, that, you know, just putting an RFP on the town website without sort of other channels of communicating that opportunity is out there is something that also needs improvement. So I think we'll give that another try. I would say I have notes in my when the town clerk's budget comes before us to look at at least establishing maybe a reserve fund for digitizing files. I think that would that be the department, Paula? Do you think that that would fall into, or if there ultimately is a communications staff person?
Right. I'm leaning more towards it would be an administrative office. Yeah.
So in any case, I think even if we don't have a specific, I mean, this is something that we have talked about for several years, and that it will need to be funded. So even if we don't have a specific plan yet, that if we start a reserve account specifically for that purpose, that is going to be coming up in a recommendation. Maybe we could get the Tuck survey on the town website. Is that, would we request could do that?
You can request that of me and I will figure that out.
May I request that of the assistant acting town manager? And I'm not sure, because even, I mean, this comes back to within the realm of communication. I think we've talked about this before. A community member gave us the most basic communications 101 advice, which is that everything begins at the website. And then if it's disseminated through social media, through print or whatever promotional methods, but that it always leads it back to the website so that people know if they're looking for something, that's where they go to find it. If they hear about it, they might hear about it through a listserv or social media posts, but that regardless, it all leads back to there. And I think that's got to be a guiding principle as we do, whenever we figure out the right entity that is going to move the website forward. I was mentioning at the beginning of the meeting that consulted someone I know who's in the user experience, the UX field and web design, and just talking about some general principles, like regardless of the content of our town's website, which definitely needs attention, but just some of the like, instead of it being like a tiny font hyperlink, you know, just things that make it a more user-friendly experience and the accessibility factor. And I'm wondering with the Juneteenth request, if, because the event does happen at the very end of the 23 fiscal year, if there are, you know, if we are able to consider like maybe some fundraising donations again, but if there are some expenses maybe that are incurred by individuals, that if we fund the 24 budget with a little more than we need for 24, if those might be able to be encumbered and reimbursed, or is that?
That I would completely defer to Gail.
Okay, so that's something we could discuss when we get to the 24 funding question. Oh, I had one more question, which we discussed the other day, was, and I was going to research the answer and I didn't, but Paula might know, the HCOREI charge has term limits when we were talking about the charge. And we were curious about whether that was standard through all town committees, or if that was something that was just developed when the HCOREI committee was, because, you know, we've got 2 members who, according to the charge, are going to be off in 2023, and they're really valuable members. And it would be like, you know, certainly I'm very much a proponent of making sure all of the vacancies are clearly posted and available so that anyone could apply for those seats. But unless it's consistent.
So you're saying they have actual, you can serve for 4 years and that's it.
My term ends on April 3rd, and I cannot, according to our charge, be on the committee any longer after my 6th year.
6 years. And
my first year was a ad hoc committee, but the charge includes that year in the cumulative total.
I think that's very unusual.
It's not common in any other committee.
Okay, so maybe when the committee does the charge update, pardon me, that could be a proposed change. If it isn't something that's consistent, so. There, and I'm really excited to look deeper into this.
So a question that came up last night with Chuck is we do have communications money now in this fiscal year, the active fiscal year that's already budgeted. And are there ways to allocate if we're not going to like move forward with the communications officer freelance work on the website or on some of these communication channels and use that money to get us closer to that place? Or use that money for freelance work for some of this policy work that needs to be done because it's going to be part of our website and communications. So I don't know what the strict rules are on allocations for things that have been set up or something, but those were discussions that we had about how do we use these funds that we do have available to move at least a couple of steps forward in these areas. The policy work is near and dear to me because I'm a wonk. And I really want to figure out a way to get this started, because I think once the ball gets rolling, it becomes uniform. It becomes part of the staff's routine. Every 3 years, you read through your things. Oh, we don't have that truck anymore. We need to change that. Version 3, stamp, and then it's available on the website. But it becomes part of the town routine. And the select board looks at their policies on a regular basis, and that policy on policy makes all of those decisions. How often, you know, obviously as needed if something changes, but how often do we look at them just for the sake of saying this is still applicable? Anyway, so I think that's it from us. Is there anything like, how can we help? Like, we have a group of people who are like kind of dying to help. So.
You folks asked for an increase in funding for Juneteenth. What would that increase in funding allow you to do?
So we've never had any funding. It's been entirely voluntary. We've been really lucky with some Dartmouth College people donating large amounts of food. I think we paid the DJ with town funds, but I think that was it. And it's been heavily volunteer oriented. This year, we are hoping to add some more family-friendly activities. There's a Vermont art bus that allows kids to come onto the bus, make a piece of artwork while they're there. We had Norwich Bookstore come and sell race-related materials. They had a lovely time. We had a caterer out of Windsor that served Ethiopian food, and we would like to continue to expand with those kinds of activities. And some financial support would take us out of, like, when we can get donations, we'll absolutely take them, but not have to limit it to what someone else is offering us. And then obviously our DJ, and if we get to a point where we can do an honorarium for a larger speaker, those kinds of
And
things.
promotion, just promoting the event too.
Yeah, and promotion, yes, because that's a community member is actually paying out of her pocket for all of the posters that are in this event.
So while I think that Juneteenth is a good event to hold. The only reason I hesitate for town funding of Juneteenth is that we don't fund other events. We don't fund like Memorial Day. We don't fund Veterans Day. We don't fund other events within the town. I'm just concerned if it may set precedents. We fund 4th of July.
And
4th of July.
And the trunk or treat. And yeah, I mean, they're programs within the Parks and Rec department, but
Exactly, we're in Parks and Rec department. So
it's not a department staff thing.
but we fund it within Parks and Rec.
Want to establish an equity department, then
Well, you just said it's within the Parks and Rec department. However, this is something separately. And I just want to make sure that if we're going to do this, that we don't set the wrong precedent towards something. Not that like I say, I don't think that Juneteenth it's a good event, but I just have to think a little more through the actual budgeting money for that, set aside specifically for Juneteenth, and without other things that are outside of a Parks and Recreation setting.
Other questions?
Just food for thought.
No?
I mean, I guess in response to that, just briefly, I would say that I personally feel in support of us supporting a Juneteenth event. I think that feels like a no-brainer, and it is connected to committee's work, and we have an investment in racial equity and inclusion with our strategic plan with this committee. So I'll leave that there. But I did have I guess just a follow-up on the policy on policies, because I know that's been ongoing, long overdue. We're trying to figure out, what does that actually look like? And so, we do have this reference point from VLCT's policy on policies to reference. I would feel comfortable with the committee just personally with HCOREI, kind of taking a pass at, drawing from that option or others to see what that policy on policies could look like. But I don't know, Paula, if you have thoughts as someone who's probably kind of steeped in some town policies, just what the committee maybe, if we'd go in that direction, should be mindful of. Not saying that whatever, HCOREI folks as volunteers draft becomes binding policy, right? There would have to be a lot of steps in place, but I'm just wondering if you have thoughts about how we might be able to support and have a, generative collaboration with HCOREI folks who are rearing to go and ready. And I think have a lot of skills that they can offer in that. So I guess the question is, maybe your comfort on if HCOREI folks kind of taking a pass at a policy on policies, or any other things from your perspective that maybe we should consider?
I did jot down when that came up. I said, so policy on policies is obviously pretty broad.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, is that staff policies, is that select board policies, is that policies as far as getting a license for an event, something like that? Is it that broad?
I think you can probably answer
So
better.
in general, so my history is in academia and hospital healthcare, but in general, the policy on policy basically states, we review our policies at a specific time. These are the types of people. This is the way that policies are approved. They go from department chair to this person, to this person, to the select board or whatever. So it's very much a procedural document that decides how policies are handled, managed, reviewed, and approved by an entity. So it can include all of those things. And in general, at least in healthcare, it includes the policies themselves, things that apply to patients, job aids, like a procedure on how one implements a policy kind of thing. So yes, it can cover all of those things, and it's not binding in a way that like tells you which policies you have to have. It's more of just adopting a procedure on how policies are managed.
So a procedure on policies that already stand, or would it also recommend changes in language of standing policies?
So the policy on policies would not address language and standing policies in any way. It would only say our town process for adopting an ordinance, which applies to the public, is A. Our town policy on adopting a policy which applies to the town internal is B. And these are the chains that they go through, and these are the recommended cycles of review and recertification. So there's no judgment of what we have in content.
And I would just add to that, things, other like really useful pieces of information are sort of like, who's responsible for this policy, like which department or which, who kind of owns this policy, who is it, if you have questions about this policy, who do you go to? And then also just the history of when it was amended, when it was created, when it was amended. There's, I don't know, I said a lot of stuff recently, but the CIP policy that was referenced in the BLCT budget. Well, and Sarah has, and I can forward, I know we sent them to Tracy, but we can forward them as well. But she has a template, like it's just the things you fill in. It's not necessarily, I mean, the content is how to make or update a policy. And then there's like the date it was made, who approved it, who, just like a consistent format for how our policies are presented.
I got lost a little bit when you started talking because it sounded like it was a little not simpler, but a little it was very specific. I think when you were saying it's procedural. And then I think, Kim, when you started speaking, when you're talking about which department, where does this policy go to? Who belongs to that policy? And I'm thinking more of the template. I'm referring more to the template. So
so one of the good things about the policy on policies will show you on the bottom of every policy or the top, our policy number is always in the top right-hand corner. The department owned is always here. The title of the person who owns the thing is here, but then their name when they approved it, because jobs roll and change. So you have a link to the job in case Jean left. But you also have the, where it falls in the world. And then the last time it was updated and then what the version number is. And then we also have to keep all of our old versions. So ours are linked, right? So you could look at what changed from A to B to C if you so wanted. Not a rabbit hole you have to go down. I'm just throwing out there like that just outlines, the policy on policy outlines how one would read a policy. And it's just one of the parts of it. And I can share you some samples.
Dan and Rocket.
Two things. I just want to comment that I think that Juneteenth is essential to have as an activity that our towns should be supporting. And I would throw this question out there. If we need to make this in the Juneteenth event something that falls under a department that a department would own, so it could be funded in that manner, how do we do that? So would it fall under Parks and Rec? Would it fall under something else? So that we could fund it directly without any question. I think it's essential work that needs to continue, that we just started, which we should have been doing for much longer than we have. It's recognized by the state. And I really support that. And I think putting this one event under a department that was then run by HCOREI would be a solution that would solve all those problems. I just don't know how that process works.
Because that's a funding issue and where the money goes and where the money comes from, I will ask.
Perfect.
Gail to look at.
Thank you.
I'm supportive of what Dan just said on both of those counts. But I'm also supportive of having a policy on policies, but I'm very confused as to why HCOREI would be taking that on versus even like the charter committee, let's say.
So we brought it to our strategic plan and directive was to have policies in town reviewed through a lens of equity and inclusion. We did a year's worth of research, and what we discovered is that we can't review policies until they're accessible, which is also an equity and inclusion piece. And we can't make them accessible until they are readable, legible. So it kind of all backed up. So what HCOREI brought to the town was a recommendation to do these particular things. And the board made a motion and approved that recommendation and directed the town staff to do that work. And so for us, it's not, we want to play in the last step of this process, but there's no action that can be taken until all of these other pieces fall into place. And so that's why we're pushing it from our committee lens. But it's also, I mean, as a citizen, I had a cement truck in my front yard at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I could not anywhere on the town website figure out what time our noise ordinance was. And I'm calling people and I'm like, and of course the cement guy says Hartford doesn't have a noise ordinance. And then I got Joanne on the phone after 8 a.m. And in fact, we do have a noise ordinance that I literally could not find on our website. So, I mean, as a citizen, our policies are a disaster.
So I guess my question is, are you asking, I mean, I wasn't on the board last year when this was voted through, so I'm confused. Are you asking the board to get on it with creating a policy of policies, or is HCOREI drafting the policy of policies so that downstream the policies can be examined through a lens of equity?
So I'm asking the board what the process is to get a policy in front of you. And if the policy needs to be drafted by someone, we are happy to offer a first draft.
Gotcha.
We are also happy to stay out of it.
Gotcha.
Wait, I think the most important thing on any policy and policies is who enforces the policy. Because that's everybody I've heard talked about is we're going to say who wrote it, you know, when it was established. We have to have a governing body of who enforces the policy. And there's a lot of question in town right now about policies and ordinances and who's enforces what. And that's lacking in a lot of pieces that we have now. So
the policy template could say include an enforcement section, but the policy on policies would never dictate enforcement on a specific ordinance or policy, because that would fall within the department that created that. So like Parks and Rec would enforce a no littering on Lyman Park policy. The police department would, you know what I'm saying?
What I'm saying is that within your policy and policies, it has to, one of the requirements is state who enforces said policy.
Yes, all of the parts of the policy. Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, that's
okay. All right, thank you, Sarah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, our next item of business, the Certified Local Government Program Grant. We have Matt for this one, I believe. Let's turn it over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Matt Osborne, Town Planner in the Department of Planning and Development. I provide staff support to the Historic Preservation Commission. Jonathan Scheckman is with me. He's the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. Hartford is a certified local government, has been since 1993. It's one of 17 CLGs in Vermont. We're eligible for annual historic preservation grants. And we've received 30 of those grants since 1993. Taft's Flat is a fascinating example of 20th century residential development. There are about 6 different residential developments that occurred, some starting as early as the early 1900s, some going into the 1960s and later. There's quite a range of architectural styles there. And I have in my office, I have a US Geological Survey topographic map. I looked on it earlier today, and there were 11 buildings on Taft's Flat in 1908. So it was the Taft's farm. There wasn't even a road. Hartford Ave did not exist in the late 1890s. It was developed and then developed residential development and some commercial development followed in the early 20th century. 3 years ago, we received a grant to do an intensive level survey of the Taft's Flat residential areas. We were able to hire an architectural historian who did more research and came up with recommendations about the possibility of 6 potential historic districts. And out of that survey, approximately 100 residences, houses on Task Flat would be eligible for listing on the National Register. Some individually, but the vast majority of them as a historic district. So we're looking to apply for a CLG grant, which is due December 12th. The grant request would be $11,300. The local match, it's a 60-40 grant. The local match would be $7,693, of which over $5,000 would be staff in-kind time and volunteer time of the Historic Preservation Commission. And it would also include $2,500 in cash, which is within the current town budget for this fiscal year. I'm going to pass it over to Jonathan.
Again, this is one of many historic districts throughout the town. And one of the advantages to that is just the knowledge that it gives the homeowners and a sense of pride in the community. And some of these neighborhoods are so interesting, 5 or 6 log homes that were built by the same family for their kids and for public sale. Another cluster of homes were begun by local business people who funded their money to start creating residences at cost for local workers. And this was in the 1920s. And there are newspaper articles that indicate that this was a problem throughout the whole state. Rutland was having problems finding worker housing. Burlington was having problems. And here we are 100 years later, and we have the same issue. So just having the historic perspective is somewhat advantageous to at least allowing the town to move forward. And it's such I have to say, the leverage is so amazing. Just a little bit of money and some volunteer time, and we get some amazing advantages. So, certainly we'd love to have the a town again okay this proposal.
Kim.
What kind, I feel excited about this. I'm delighted. My only question is, what kinds of things do the volunteers do?
Well, we do. So part of what we do is actually windshield surveys. So we'll drive around, and when an area is proposed to be investigated, our staff will take a look at those areas and ascertain whether or not we evaluate it as being advantageous to pursue. We also have to review the actual RFP. We spend time developing the concepts and trying to evaluate again whether or not it's valid to approach the select board with these specific ideas. And we actively meet with the professionals and get information as to how they're progressing and what it is that they found. For instance, just a few weeks ago, a number of us went to the Coolidge Hotel and had an interesting 3-hour tour of the hotel and the basement and everything, and sort of helping David Briggs to kind of look forward to what the next phase of this building is. Another time we went to the railroad station to look at the canopy that's there that the Agency of Transportation wants to tear down, and it's always been there. It's been part of the railroad station. It is decaying, but again, the volunteers go out, and then we meet afterwards and kind of discuss, well, does it make sense to tear it down? What are the costs to rehab it? Does it make sense? Is it better to deal with this dollars and cents and do it, hit it and quit it, that's going to be good for 15 years, or actually do a proper job and have it last for 50 years? So we just spend our time, we have various areas of expertise on the committee, and anyway, that's.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Matt or John? Dan?
Is the management of the grant by the staff within your department or other staff members outside your department?
No, it's within our department.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's 90% my time and 10% Lori's time.
Barry?
And
The cost of hiring a consultant is $13,500. What's the role of the consultant?
We'll put out a request for proposals. They will come in. We are hire the best consultant out of the proposals that we receive. The architectural historian would come in, they would go over all of the intensive level survey information from the previous intensive level survey. They would then review that and figure out what would be most appropriate for historic district nominations. So what our goal is to get 1, 2, or 3 historic district nominations from this grant. So the consultant would actually prepare those historic district nominations.
In this case, we're very fortunate that the preliminary intensive level survey has been performed, because that'll cut a lot of the labor time by maybe a half, which then means we can get more districts than if we just started with some raw acreage and said, okay, what do you guys think about this? This is really going to be very cost effective and a great benefit to the town.
I'll take a motion. Okay,
Make a motion that we move to approve the submission of a grant application for the 2023 Certified Local Government Program and authorize the town treasurer to sign all documents related to the grant application and project implementation.
I'll second.
Oh,
Jane.
sorry.
A second.
all right, got Lanny for a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you both very much for coming in.
You're very welcome. I just wanted to say that,
Sally.
sorry,
Go ahead.
just briefly, last year, you gave us granting for the current project, which is looking at the performing arts in the town. And so anyone that has anything, any contact or any experience with going to the movies, the drive-ins, dances, Wild Bill's Wild West show, anything of that nature, or if you know of people that will, our consultant is really interested in getting some interviews in order to get the most historic background possible. So
I believe I saw The Empire Strikes Back in the drive. It's very small. Great.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we're moving on to the TruNarc purchasing policy exception request. It looks like we got someone here. Yeah, you want to just come up there and identify yourself and just tell us about TruNarc.
Okay, Tom Howell from Police Department, Patrol Lieutenant. Acting Chief Kelly put together the memo for the TruNarc. The TruNarc is a device that uses a laser to test. I think it's up to 500 substances. A lot of those are narcotics and other drugs that we come across. So the laser actually allows us to test the drugs through any packaging, whether it's in an evidence bag or in the packaging that it comes in. And it gives us a result of what that item is that we can actually take from the device and print and add to cases, or just identify what that substance is. My phone is freaking out, sorry. So the importance of this is currently with not only fentanyl, but every other thing we come across, whether it has it or it does not. We're trying to mitigate our officers, to include myself, touching anything or handling anything more than we really have to. And where that can come into secondary contact with our phones, with our workstations, so anywhere on the PD. So it's really just one thing to see what these items are that we're dealing with, and also test it if we need it for a court case, or test it to see if it's something that is dangerous or not.
So it's like the virtue of this, that like you can just, you don't have to like handle the substance and test it.
Yeah, so our current test kits, which are industry kind of standard, they're these small rubber, they're probably 1 inch wide by 2 inches long, rubber or plasticky rubbery tubes that we would have to open up, take a like a small piece of paper that it comes with, scoop drugs out or substance out, pour it into vial, close it, and then there's glass capsules inside of those that you break in a sequence.
Okay.
I've personally seen some somebody get cut by the glass coming through the plastic. So that's another issue that we don't want to deal with. So you're taking bad drugs, putting in this little teeny test kit and then breaking those glass vials. So it's we still use those for some things, but the TruNarc is certainly the industry standard. The Drug Enforcement Administration uses them. Our partners in the Vermont State Police drug units and the New Hampshire drug units, they use them. We just don't have access to it on a daily basis like we really need.
Okay. Ally and Lanny?
Yeah. So the current process is that anytime something needs to get tested, it needs to go to the state forensic laboratory.
So presumptive, like if we just need to, so outside of anything that we might think is heroin or fentanyl, and even it's getting to the point where like our methamphetamines, we don't know if it's laced. Most of that stuff's going to go to the lab if we need it for a court case. It will always go to the lab if it goes to like trial. That the state's attorneys are typically going to want us to get that tested by the lab, but we're not testing our heroin or anything that we think has fentanyl in it, and sometimes our methamphetamine because of the dangers of fentanyl. So so what we're seeing is that the court or the judges are dropping the case completely because we don't have a test that says that it's a drug or whatever it is.
Yeah, and this narcotics analyzer, the TruNarc, is going to be just as reliable as whatever is happening when it goes to the forensics laboratory.
Yeah, it'll probably still go up there, but this is what is being used by the DEA. This is what's being used by the New Hampshire drug units. This is what's being used by the Vermont drug units. It's an industry standard.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Lanny?
So a couple of questions. Is this device able to detect marijuana usage?
Marijuana usage?
Well, marijuana, it's able to tell if it's marijuana, but that's it.
Like to test for marijuana? Without looking at the list, like typically marijuana, if we have to test it, we're gonna test it in a marijuana test kit.
Okay.
That's what we've done in the past. We're not doing as much of that. I'm pretty sure I can get the list. I just don't have it. There's 500 different substances that we'll test for.
And then where is it being purchased through? Because I just did a Google search for this on Fisher Scientific site and they list it for $30,000, $30,200.
The quote from that I have here is from Thermo Scientific Portable Analytical Instruments out of Tewksbury, Mass. And the kit that we are purchasing has it's the unlimited. So essentially, every time you test that we can do that unlimited times. So they make you can buy an 100 test cycle or you can pay by the test. But the kit here is the unlimited tests with a warranty.
And how often does this machine get recalibrated?
I don't have that answer.
So the question, I guess, if I were a lawyer, is when's the last time your machine was calibrated?
Yeah. So that's all. That would be something that when we get when our officers get trained, just like our portable breath testers that we use, those get calibrated monthly. We zero our rifles; those get zeroed quarterly. So when we would receive that item and we get that training, then without looking at the material, I couldn't tell you, but it would be based on manufacturer's recommendations.
So when something like this or any of your devices that you use get calibrated, specifically if it's going to be used for evidentiary purposes, is it have a calibration sticker on it?
I don't know if it has a calibration.
But there is a calibration record.
If the tool needed to be calibrated, just like our PBTs, our portable breath testers, there's a calibration record of when we did that. So that if a defense attorney says, well, I need your calibration records for the last 5 years, we would have those items. So whatever the cycle is for this device, we would follow suit. And if it was a monthly basis, if it was a yearly basis, we would document that and have those records.
Okay. And where will this device be housed?
So that is going to be determined. It will likely be overseen by the Criminal Investigations Division, but
if to use this tool to the best of its ability, it will probably be a senior officer on every shift that will be trained on how to use it, and it'll be secure in a secure area like our armory, which is controlled access, even inside of the PD.
So this will not be used in the field. This is to be used at the PD only.
It could be used, like we could bring it to, if we had a case where there was an unknown, like we certainly could bring it because it's a portable device. But
Okay.
it wouldn't be sitting in the back of the sergeant's car driving around town.
That's what my concern is, not having it bounce around.
No, it would be in a
Sure.
control, so likely it would be in a secure area within the PD that's controlled access to a certain group of people.
And I assume this has strips or something else that you use.
Yeah, so the sometimes depending on the packaging, the laser actually sometimes won't get all the way through. So there is some strips and there's a solution which is part of the quote that if we had to use that, we could.
Right, so what is the, I guess, for lack of a better term, yearly cost on this? I mean, do you foresee us buying a bunch of strips or?
It's good. I think that number is going to totally dependent on kind of current trends in town. I think the solution kit that we have listed of 100 is probably going to be more than sufficient for a year. But if we had a TruNarc now, I bet you we would use it quite a bit. I just don't know the number. Like we definitely have asked for help from other agencies in the past for some cases.
That's going to be my question, as far as how many times in the past have we actually tested narcotics that would, you don't have that available, so.
Yeah, I've been a part of a lot of cases where we've had to ask an agency to come and help us, and because they are, they don't work for the town of Hartford. They're like, I can be here in 4 days. The problem with that is if we are dealing with somebody that's maybe depending on the quantity or whatever, they don't live in the state, we want to get those people before a judge, and we would want to have those results immediately.
And if you did not have this, what would be the path to obtaining a certified, well, I don't know if this is even a certified sample. Is this going to give you a certified sample?
This is going to give us a printout of what that drug is. We would still likely get it. Like we would be able to get somebody to court and seen by a judge based on this.
Okay.
The state may still want a lab to test that, or for a jury trial. But a lot of times, it's months. It's 6 months before the lab will cycle some of that stuff through. Maybe even longer.
Sorry, I'm asking these questions, but how will this device result in a reduction of, I don't want to say drug use, or will it increase drug convictions?
So it certainly will help us with some of the unknowns where we come across somebody that isn't from the area, and I've personally taken in items that we don't know what it is. It's a whatever colored substance, and we have no way to test it. We'll be able to use that device to identify it. I don't know if we're necessarily going to reduce crime with it. It's really going to be for that officer safety piece, to test this stuff appropriately and get those people that have those items in front of the court, so that they maybe can have court conditions of release where they can't use drugs or whatever the court does. So it's going to help us, I think, have a little more teeth when we do some of these things that related to drugs.
So you just made a statement that I have to ask about, though.
Yeah.
You said for officer safety.
Yeah.
So and I believe that's a good goal, but my concern is if you have unknown substances in the field, transportation of those substances into the police department, how do those get transported, and is there a potential for harm?
With all due respect, Lenny, are these questions going to affect your vote?
Yes.
Yeah. So we use industry standard evidence bags, search evidence bags. All of our officers carry those in their cars. They're sealed bags. So when we go to a scene, those items that we seize get placed into a sealed bag that our state laboratory uses. Most states use Searchy. It's if you look them up, that's where we get all of our stuff. Those items go into a sealed, secure bag. They have to get transported to the police department because we can't just throw them in a trash can. We have to take them back, place them in our secure evidence or property room and deal with them appropriately, whether there's a criminal incident or we found it on the street or what have you. So they do get placed into an evidence bag, and we can still use that the TruNarc to test through the bag. So it's an added way for us to not have to reopen that bag and handle it and test those items.
Okay, isn't the virtue that you don't have to touch stuff and risk getting toxic substances on you?
Yes.
Okay. Kim and then Mary.
Getting text from Gail on vacation, that this purchasing of this product was already approved in the fiscal budget. What we're needing to do today is just the purchasing policy exception so that it can be a single source and not put out to bid. So that was what, so it's in the 23 budget from salary savings in 22.
Great.
Right.
And just
that was I have my hand up because the request for the board is the exception for purchasing policy to not have to do an RFP because this particular device isn't available from anyone else.
Mary, did you have a question?
It was just a quick question. Would EMTs and paramedics be able to use this or they'd have to be trained? Because you were talking about the police department, but I was just wondering.
I think if they wanted us to test something, we would just do it, like go to wherever they are and do it. I don't think that's an issue.
Okay.
The other thing with this device, it actually, the Thermo Fisher is actually holding their old pricing on it for us, and it's the price increase was like $7,000 if we don't pull the trigger.
I can make a motion. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Chair, I move that we approve an exception to the purchasing policy section 3.7 to allow the police department to purchase the TruNarc product and services from Thermo Fisher Scientific.
Second
from Dan. Any discussion? Wayne?
Yeah. When I ask questions, I have to be able to justify my vote to the voters of the town of Hartford. And that's why I ask the questions that I ask. And I do not appreciate your interrupting me when I'm asking questions. I'm doing my job, the taxpayers of the town of Hartford.
With all due respect, you could email a lot of these questions in advance.
So
because there's a lot of us here listening to this line of questions. And I think a lot of the questions weren't answered. So
you can ask your questions and I can ask mine. Thank you.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you very much for coming in and explaining this to us.
Me too.
Okay, our next item was to have Ryan Selza on from the budget and candidate night, but he was going to appear by Zoom. So it's just not going to happen. But he did want, he wanted us, he was going to ask the board if we could just think about some topics that might be interesting for the town to hear at the information night. You mentioned in the past, people talked about things like the pool or the welcoming ordinance. I don't know. So I would just say, if you guys have ideas of what you'd like to get on the info night calendar, just send me an email, let me know, or send it to Ryan directly. And he can put it on there. So.
Do you mind if I just put in my 2 cents?
Yep.
As you're thinking of that, the way Mike mentioned, the pool that was bonded and voted for, the WHO, the same thing. So it wouldn't be just another opportunity for select board meeting topics. It would possibly be something that would be a more grand step that you were going to take going forward, like possible building of this, a rec center, or bonding this something else.
Gotcha. Kim?
What about solid waste in the transfer station? I mean, that's a pretty.
That could be certainly be a topic.
Yeah, I mean, that was what came to mind first for me. It's just, it keeps looming, and I think it might be I mean, and we did get kind of confirmation that that Gate Street is not going to be ready to go on the ballot for a bond for March 2023, but we can at least, we will have the engineering to be able to go through so that we make sure we get the engineering done in time to get it on a bond for 2024.
The funding for the engineering study currently exists.
Yes.
The next step is to get the engineer
Yes,
doing.
yes.
Yes.
Great.
So
So if you
just in
guys,
case anyone else was unclear on that.
yeah, so if you have topics you think might be of interest, let me know. I can tell Ryan, maybe Ryan can come back to us and tell us what we suggested and we can sort of just agree what we'd like to have on there. So, right.
Just with respect to the engineering being done for Gate Street, is there anything, is that in our court? Is that in town management?
No, the board already voted to fund that.
That was my understanding. So
Going
it's,
forward.
there's an RFP out or whatever. and-
I'm not exactly sure what stage it is at. I don't believe there is an RFP currently out.
Okay.
And in Ryan's most recent email, are we expecting there to be a charter update presentation? Do you know, Lanny?
We're going to have a meeting of the charter committee on Thursday, and then we will probably come back before this board prior to taking it to the attorney again. So
But do you think that the informational night is a time that a presentation on charter updates would be? So,
Yes.
okay, so that's a given, like he didn't include that in this particular email, but I think that I was, okay, so.
Great.
yes,
Okay. Yeah,
Sorry, just a question on the Gate Street thing. I guess I can offline on that, but the question is, do we need a board directive to ask or push for that? Or is that just something because it's been voted on?
I think what you might be asking is I can reach out to Public Works and get a status update.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Great. All right.
Would the board like me to do that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
so. All right, so we will move on to the main commission reports. So let's start with Lanny this time and we'll go down this one.
I did not make the Hartford Community Coalition, so I don't have anything.
Okay, Rocket, anything?
Sister City, a couple members went to France, enjoyed it. They're trying to figure out if they can get high school students now there. We'll see. HHPC, we saw them today, and they are also, the Vermont Division of Historic Preservation is looking at Murphy Farm and trying to see if it could be put on the state register of historic places.
Great. Allie, anything?
No, HCOREI did their update, so I'm good.
Perfect. Mary, anything?
Hartford Conservation Commission, we had 2 guest speakers, but they were unable to come. Went over the budget and adopted the integrated forest management plan under the understanding that there will probably be changes as time goes on. So every year they'll revisit it for an add or subtract from that, because there's constantly some changes going on. And Tom will continue to update the town weekly regarding information on what's happening with the timber harvest, which is now awaiting winter for accessibility. Hartford Parks and Rec. You may be interested to hear that on May 23rd, 2023, it will be the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Hartford Parks and Rec. And one of the things that they're considering is some way to celebrate that time. It might be something about a new program that will be investigated for Parks and Rec. So there are other things that'll be more forthcoming as we get closer to that time. Scott brought to the attention that the department is trying to obtain more data through MyRec so that they can actually send text messages regarding new programs, changes to program dates, times, or alerts to update parents or individuals on a need-to-know basis. We had 2 guests at the Parks and Rec meeting brought by Emily Sanleoni at the Hartford Community Coalition. And this was very interesting, a discussion of possible parks ordinance changes around safety issues, protection from harm from secondhand smoke from like vaping. And one of the things that several of us, myself included, didn't realize that those vaping paraphernalia contains ion batteries. So there's a concern about some of those ending up in trash. So.
Thanks, Mary. Dan?
Members of the tree board walked from the high school down to the mobile station and evaluated the trees and the median and along the sidewalks, determined what needed to be done, if they needed mulch, trimmed, whatever. And in light of what I just heard from Mary, I wonder if a nice activity would be that if 50 new trees were planted by the tree board, people could sponsor in light of their 50th anniversary.
Great.
Yeah.
Great idea. Planning Commission met last night, another long, robust meeting. They approved 3 of the 7 applications they had before them. There was significant debate around application 22-26 for a 4-lot subdivision on the corner of Stacy Lane and Birchwood Drive, which ended with the commission requiring an independent technical review of the application at the expense of the applicant. Public hearing for that application was continued till February 6th, and a special meeting was scheduled for November 28th to hear the remaining items on the agenda, since there were 3 new applications on the commission's December agenda.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any updates, so we can do the consent agenda. Dan?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve payroll ending 11/12/2022, approve meeting minutes of 11/1/2022, approve AP manifest of 11/10, 11/15/2022, approve select board meetings, which are already approved, are 11/22 and 11/29 of 2022.
Second.
Got a second from Kim. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, unanimous. We have an executive session, but we've got a little bit of time before we really need to go into it.
Great.
So I was thinking we're scheduled to meet
Yes,
at 8:30, right?
yes, but there are some things that you could address prior to.
Yeah, so do we want to go in around 10 after?
How
How about
8?
8?
Yeah.
8
Yes. Are we being joined?
at 8:30.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
So
Could our 8:30 appointment possibly be reached out to and see if they are available to meet us sooner?
I just tried.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
all right, well, we'll take a break until 8, then we can come back and discuss what we do.
And can we let
Oh, yeah, we can sign stuff.
Yeah.
Too. So, okay, we're gonna take a break until 8 o'clock.
One trick or treater, one goes the first year.
And then we usually back. Oh, yeah.
3:30 in the afternoon.
Oh, Lanny,
There were.
7-hour cycle starting at 4 AM for plow.
There were years when,
So I don't think that
you know, there's so many
All right, we are back from our break. I will take a motion to go into executive session. Ally?
Mr. Chair, I move that in accordance with Vermont's open meeting law, the select board enter into executive session to discuss confidential attorney-client communications of which premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage under the provisions of Vermont statutes, 1 VSA section 313.
I second.
Mary seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are going into executive session.